And I get this call like, would you like to have a summer internship in Washington, D.C.? And I was like, wow, I've never been to Washington, D.C. before. That was, yeah, sure, I'll go there.
This is Jim Bratton Podcast. You may enjoy some, or all, or none. Now, here's Jim.
This is the Jim Bratton Podcast, and today we're talking to Lisa Windsor. Lisa is somebody I've met at our coffee shop, and I realized that the premise of the Jim Bratton Podcast is everyone has a story. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
And I've looked over your resume to try to outline in my own mind what I was going to ask you. Can I ask you what you came out of, or what your final rank was when you were in the military?
I made full colonel, so I was very lucky to do that.
Now, let's go back and can we begin what led you into the military? Can we go way, way back to like high school or whatever? I mean, when did you know that you wanted to join the Army?
When they made me an offer in law school. Seriously.
Is that the way it came?
I had no intent. No one in my immediate family served. The last people in the family that served were my grandmother's brothers. And they all three went into a different service in World War II.
Yeah,
so we had a Marine, Air Force, and Navy.
Which was not unusual during that.
Right. And my great uncle in the Air Force, he did stay in for his entire career and made colonel and retired in Orlando. And
So So you did your undergrad work at where?
University of Texas at Arlington, primarily.
And then the JD was?
At University of Houston.
So how did they approach you?
So in law school, the first semester, they tell you that you need to go out and get some interview experience because then in the spring, you'll be interviewing with big firms for their summer internship.
Oh, so just practice.
Yes, practice. And so, I mean, I was raised in a liberal family.
Yeah.
I'm a liberal myself. I had a lot of ideas about what the military was like, and none of them were good.
What years? What years was this?
So I was in law school from, 84 to 87.
Some time ago.
Yes.
So, and it was, military was not getting a real strong shake at that time in terms of public opinion, probably.
Yeah, like my generation sort of caught the tail end of Vietnam.
Exactly.
I was a child during most of that, but remember it very vividly.
Right. You had what, semi-activist parents, probably.
My mother, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and my grandfather, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And my grandfather, being in the oil business, the oil business was sort of always the rebel anyway.
Right.
They did things outside of convention.
You're right. Particularly that era.
Mm-hmm. Particularly that era. Now they've...
Oh, they're homogenized now, but it was full of coots, old coots, and outlandish personalities.
Well, and just from listening to stories back in that era, I mean, certainly a very male-dominated period.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, that's an understatement. But just like the things that you could get away with.
On many levels.
On many levels. Like the niceties of the law just did not apply to a lot of those people. Or they didn't.
I am sure that a lot of, this is, say, corporate, small corporate lawyers with some of the independent firms had a hard time explaining to them that they couldn't do things that way.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they say,
sure.
We always have.
Well, yeah. I mean, most of those men that were in the oil business with my grandfather, I mean, they had been in the oil business from almost its inception.
Yes.
Oil was discovered in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know
right.
that.
Oh, yeah.
But my great-grandfather was at Spindletop. He struck oil in Central Texas.
Wow.
That's how my grandmother met my grandfather, being around these oil people. And
so what a legacy.
Yeah.
Not exactly preparation to join the Army.
No, not at all. No, I was a very free thinker, and I didn't think I could deal with the conformity.
Right.
I just certainly wasn't the kind of person to keep my mouth shut. So I just didn't think I would like it. And
What
so,
convinced you to go ahead and take that step?
well, I thought, I'll just do this interview and it'll be low stress because I don't really want,
It's just practice. Doesn't
right,
matter.
it's just practice. And so I went in and I wore like my most avant-garde suit, which even in law school, it's like a uniform that they
Oh,
want
yeah,
you to wear.
yeah.
And had this very nice chat with this major that was at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I didn't think anything about it.
You feel the one practice done?
Yeah, until probably like April or something. And I get this call like, would you like to have a summer internship in Washington, D.C.? And I was like, wow, I've never been to Washington, D.C. before. That was, yeah, sure, I'll go there. Like you had to pay to get yourself up there.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so that was my first, summer law student experience.
Working for?
And I was working for the Army JAG Corps, specifically in the Contract Appeals Division.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in a dorm room at Georgetown University
Right.
for the summer. And these officers in contract appeals were not like anybody that I expected to run
Army
into.
guy, like Army guys.
Yeah. They were very irreverent. They were liberal. They were irreverent. They were, they were fun. But of course, these are all high ranking officers,
They can afford.
majors and above, and so what that office does is defends the Army against contractor lawsuits.
Wow.
So this
There's
is
a lot of that going on.
this is the Army contracts with a private company.
Right. Yes. A lot of them.
The company has to meet their specifications and they have to meet their timeline,
Right.
which is often ridiculous.
Yep. No, understood.
Then when they roll out the final product, the Army still has a choice of taking it or not.
Right.
Oh, it's obsolete now. Sorry. And then they won't pay the people.
So despite what you hear about all the great benefits of being an Army contractor, you can get hung out to dry.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You could get hung out to dry very easily. And plus, I could get into all of the shady relationships between contractors.
Oh, golly. No. But listen to me.
With each other and with the military contracting officers. And yeah.
I am quite sure it was a way to have to elevate your standard of living beyond of Army pay.
Well, yes. And a lot of them weren't making a lot of Army pay, definitely. So there's, when they talk about, corruption in government, I didn't really see much of it. There might have been people skimming a little bit.
Yeah.
But the people that are really cleaning up with that sort of thing are the people like these big contractors like Lockheed Martin.
Right.
Boeing,
Lots of room for change orders.
SpaceX, or, these people that can basically, you're taking what we give you or you're not getting it at all.
And you wait another 5 years.
And they can they collude with each other.
Yeah.
Because there's only a small number of these big defense
capabilities.
contractors. With the capabilities. Now, you walk over to Lockheed Martin and you'd think you were on the campus of, Harvard University or something.
Wow.
Or better than Harvard, actually.
Well, so you do the interview. They make you an offer.
So back then, if you did an internship and they liked you and they did like me and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. You like them too.
I liked them. I had a lot of fun. And there were a bunch of other interns.
Right.
So I kind of got an idea of who I was going to be going
Was
with.
there a sense of fraternalness to it?
Very much so. A lot of those people had been in ROTC.
Yeah, right. Which I had almost expected you to say that you came through ROTC, but no.
No, I was what they call a direct commission, which is we plucked her off the street.
And you went in as what, a second?
A first lieutenant. Yes. After being in law school for 3 years, where they literally treat you like the dirt underneath their feet, the professors, to going up to the military entrance processing station, the MEPS, which was in the old post office downtown.
Right.
You go all the way up to the top
You're talking
floor
about in
Houston.
Oh, I've
Yes.
been there. Sorry.
Yes, in Houston. And I go up there and like all these people are there and they're standing in line in their long lines for everything, right? Except they're like, right this way, ma'am.
Come on.
And so I got to bypass every line and I'm like, oh yeah, I could get used to this.
So when you put on a uniform and the first time you walked across a campus and the world saluted you, what was that like?
Terrifying. Yeah. We went to Fort Lee, Virginia to end process. And I'd never put on a uniform before. I had to be shown how to roll up the sleeves and, how to do all this.
Because there are certain things.
So these are like camo uniforms, right?
Okay,
With the boots and all that. And because you really don't wear the
dress?
They call them Class A's.
Yeah.
I mean, I would if I had to go to court.
Right.
But other than that, everybody just wore the camo stuff. And I actually remember the first time somebody saluted me. And it was this woman, too. And she was a red beret.
Oh, golly bum.
I'm like, oh, I'm like, which arm am I supposed to salute with? It was that bad.
And you've got somebody who has, is such a primo,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was so, and because I wasn't ROTC, I did not have a 6-year commitment like they did.
Yeah.
And so I also, pretty much had my choice of assignments.
What do you mean no 6-year commitment? Could you get out anytime you?
Well, I signed a contract, and it's sort of like it's 8 years, but it's sort of like 4 years on active duty and then 4 more years in the reserves or something. But you could request to get out, after the first 4 years, or like being a direct commission, I could just say, I'm not going to come in at all. I got an offer downtown or something. And so, before you got to the first training place, Fort Lee, you already knew what your assignment was going to be, your first assignment. And so I wanted to do trial work.
Did you have to go through any semblance of basic training?
Not then. Now they do.
I was going to say, because you didn't know how to march?
Oh, no, and I'm super uncoordinated, too. I'm sure I would have, dropped my rifle or something. No, back then, so this was 1988 when I went in. They, you had to have graduated from law school. Actually, you were supposed to have graduated from law school, but they didn't ask to see your bar card. And this actually resulted in 2 people in my basic class not actually being licensed to practice law. One person had not been to law school at all, and the other person had flunked the bar exam. After that, they started. We had to send in a copy of our bar card.
Let's talk about what it was. Everybody's going to want to know, I'm sure. You're a woman in the service.
Uh-huh.
It's a male-dominant field.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel?
I saw varying philosophies of that with the women. Okay.
Well, you had seen other workplaces and their attitudes toward women just through your.
Well, yeah, and I mean to say I'd seen other workplaces. There was college jobs, waitressing and stuff, but there wasn't that big push towards consideration of others and equal opportunity and all that. They just didn't really have that, or it wasn't as pronounced. That, nobody really talked about it. There was not these requirements. I saw women try to outman the men.
Yeah,
that didn't work because if you're inauthentic, nobody's gonna like you anyway. I wasn't even a very good runner. I was really bad at physical fitness. But I just figured, that the pathway to success was be yourself, just be better than everybody else.
Wow.
Or, also, just what they teach you in the Army, there is a purpose here much higher than yourself. This is not about you. And as long as you focus on the needs of this service, the good of the organization, whatever you do is going to be right. It was the people that focused on their careers,
So the career will follow.
The career will follow. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to do what, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to be challenged.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be bored. And so yeah, I volunteered. I volunteered for assignments. I went to Korea.
Just give me a quick checklist of some of the things you did. I looked over your resume and I could, it's a lot of stuff that you've done. So
the high points. Okay, I'll give you the high points. I spent a year in Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
That was 1990, 1991.
Right.
The first desert storm broke out at that time.
Wow.
And so, like, one of the things that the people in the general population may not understand is that, you don't want to join the military and miss the war. That's what you train for. That's your job. The pinnacle of success in the JAG Corps is to be able to advise a commander in actual combat. And so instead of people like shying away from going to combat, everybody wants to go. It's very career enhancing.
This is all fresh. And Mary's at the other end of the table, by the way, and she's just sitting there in amazement, by the way, as she listens.
Well, and I've sat on promotion boards, and definitely those evaluations that come out of a combat zone are more heavily weighted.
Because they're for real?
Because that's a very, very stressful environment. And, and you don't have a lot of downtime.
Right.
And so, like, if you're going to do good work, you need to do it there.
How do you deal with the time constraints and maybe the lack of support, or the kind of, you can't just go into a law library and look for stuff necessarily. I mean, what's it like?
We did have a law library, but we weren't involved as much in appellate stuff, which is where you get the Southwest reporters or military justice reporters.
Right.
I would say certainly serving in Korea, I was the chief of legal assistance in Yongsan, which is the big military base in Seoul, and there's there must be in and around Seoul probably about 40,000 service members, retirees,
good sized community,
family members. Yeah, it was a huge and so general civil law, we would cover all of the wills, powers of attorney, marital problems. I would have somebody drive me, because you don't drive over there.
No, I'm sure.
And they would drive me to sort of outlying areas so that we could do wills.
Yeah.
So again, it was amazingly fun assignment. After that, I had requested to go to Fort Hood.
Right.
Because they were deployed.
Right.
And so they told me I couldn't leave Korea early, but that my next assignment would be 1st Cavalry Division. And I'd be there for a couple of weeks, and then I would ship out to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Well, by the time I got there, the war had ended.
So you missed the war.
The 1st Cavalry Division did not get to do as much as they hoped that they were going to be able to do. So they had all these people, they're like revved up with nowhere to go. And so they just unleashed themselves on the Killeen, and surrounding communities.
And you had to take care of them.
And so, like, I started out as the chief of administrative law. And so I had to do all these property accountability investigations.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of property.
Really?
A lot of property. I think one of our units lost an entire tank. And it's not like they're lost. It's like they lost accountability for them. They don't. That's got to be somewhere. But
they're somewhere.
Exactly know where it is. Yes. And this is because, it's just a kind of a debacle. They hadn't done that. They didn't have any staging areas, like they do. And the other, like, I could swear that, like, everybody in the Middle East must have a pair of American night vision goggles.
Because we all got left.
Yeah, because they just went missing routinely. There were so many. So, 1st Cavalry Division. So, they come back and they're all, they have all this adrenaline, and nothing to do with it. And so by this time, like prior to 1986, the military only prosecuted these purely military offenses or offenses that happened on the installation.
Right, on base.
Because of a Supreme Court case called United States versus Solaria in 1986, the Supreme Court determined that different from the state, so in the state, jurisdiction attaches to the location of the crime.
Right.
In the military, jurisdiction attaches to the troop themselves. And so they can be court-martialed then anywhere they go, and anywhere the crime has been committed. So at that point, we started prosecuting all the same offenses that they were prosecuting down at the district attorney's office.
Wow. So had most of your people had experience in that area or not?
So, I did the ad law thing for about 6 months, and then they moved me up to be a trial counsel, is what they call their prosecutors. And so, because I'd already been a defense counsel,
right,
which was my first tour at Fort Lewis, Washington, I had experience.
Courtroom experience.
Courtroom experience, right. It was no longer such a terrifying thing, as it was. For me, it took like about a year, before I actually felt like I wasn't going to vomit or something. And also the types of offenses that you're likely to see sort of have a parallel with the specialties of the troops that are stationed there.
I had never ever even thought. Give me a little, for example, here.
Well, so when enlisted personnel come into the military, they have to take the ASVAB test.
Right.
The people that score on the lower end, the kind of jobs that the specialties that they get are things like, they get to go in the infantry, army. These are usually the combat arms troops.
Right.
They work in the motor pool, or, they're a gunnery sergeant, something like that.
Yeah.
One of my, so as a trial counsel, you have a particular area that you're responsible for.
Right.
And so I was responsible for this one particular brigade.
Okay.
I had two. I had the Division Support Command, which is traditionally the largest unit.
Right.
Okay. These are men and women working together. So guess what kind of crimes?
Oh, golly.
I got all the sex crimes. Okay. All the sex crimes. My other brigade was the engineers.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they were there. Like, I never heard a peep out of them the whole time I was there. They were engineers. They just did not get into trouble. But the poor, Division Support Command people, they pretty much stayed in trouble all the time. And yeah, so you were asking about, what was it like working in a male-dominated, okay? I mean, I had grown up in a pretty male-heavy family.
Yeah.
So I never had, like all men in the workplace. And yeah, sometimes I would be the only female there.
I'm sure.
And you kind of learn pretty quickly that, men just don't talk about the same things that women do. Men talk about their genitalia more than anything I've ever seen or heard. They're just obsessed with it from the time they're little boys, I guess.
Well, we never develop beyond middle school, okay? You keep everything on a middle school level with us, we're good. Dick jokes are always good.
People, and I would know, like, these are husbands and fathers. I think they thought that me and their wives were two different species. They just did not equate me, And really, like, after a while, I just became one of the guys.
Yeah.
They never said anything disrespectful to me.
Understood.
But they did tease me the same way they teased each other.
That is a very good observation. And I'm not sure that everyone is capable of making that observation.
I never felt demeaned.
Yeah.
I never felt, I just figured they were just jealous of me because I got better results than they did. A lot of...
They never tried to torpedo you to sabotage in any way?
No, not at all. No. And I wouldn't have stood for that,
I know.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, certainly in the JAG Corps with competition for assignments,
Right.
there was some of that.
A little bit.
I did figure out that as you're climbing the ladder of success, your peers are not always patting you on the
But
back.
that's a peer thing as opposed to a gender thing, right?
I like sort of early on, I guess. I think this was in Korea. The then Judge Advocate General, we were at a get together party, and no, I guess it wasn't the general, it was the head of personnel. Yeah. That made this comment about, why should we promote you women? You're just going to get married and get pregnant and get out anyway.
Wow.
And I mean, I'd heard from other people that his thought process was not that, but I was just standing there thinking, like, I have no intention to do either one of those things. If I get out, it's going to be because it's not fun anymore, and I want to do something different. I'm certainly not going to get out because I get married and get pregnant. And they would always, like, one of my mentors in the military, and he had been the head of personnel. He's like, of the couples, like, the wrong person always got out. Like, we would have always rather the guy had gotten out, instead, and a woman stayed in. And I mean, at the War College, I learned that, women have a lot to offer the military, especially having to do with their style of communication.
I was going to back to when you were prosecuting. What's it like to prosecute somebody who maybe gets in trouble all the time, but is still an asset to the armed forces? Did you have to weigh that all the time or sometimes?
Yes. I mean, in the military, good soldier evidence means a lot. Good character. Do they, how they do their job? Does their commander respect them?
Right,
Are they trustworthy? That kind of thing. Army values.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to say, it's a values-based organization. But it really was. I mean, to the extent that, like, every time I went in the commanding general's office to discuss a case, we discussed those values, loyalty, honesty, selfless service,
Wow.
And you don't, I had done, like, my second summer internship in law school. My second summer, I worked for the Harris County District Attorney's Office. And so I got to see, like, what that was like, how they did it, did things. And again, I mean, I came away from both systems thinking, that the justice system is not perfect, but the people that I was around were constantly trying to improve it.
That's very gratifying.
Yeah,
Those
really.
of us that have never been right in the center of that system, it's very, very nice to hear that. Gosh, we've used up a lot of time. We've had a great time. However, let's wrap up. I think we'll do more if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Tell me about the War College.
That was a really great assignment. So in military education, there's like 3 tiers of military education, and the Army War College is the top tier. Colonels have to have graduated from the War College in order to be promotable to general officer.
Okay.
So the people that are at the War College are 05s and 06s. And so this would, in lieutenant colonels and colonels, or in the Navy, they would be commanders and captains.
So in other words, this is prep for the next step.
This is
next
prep
step
for the
is off
next
the table
step.
if it's
right.
If it's
This is definitely prep for the next step. And so you could go to that school in residence if you got picked, or you could do distance. Okay. But they decided.
Okay.
I had done the previous school in residence, which was at beautiful Leavenworth, Kansas. I spent a year there, snowed in, and so I really wanted to go in residence, and I got the distance ed thing, and I was really pissed about that. But so 2 years, of distance education. You do a year and then you go in for 2 weeks, and then you do another year and then you go in for another 2 weeks and you graduate. So the Army War College is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which is central Pennsylvania, about 45 minutes away from Harrisburg, the capital. Wow. Beautiful little,
I was going to say, that's a nice country.
Dickinson College is there. Yeah. They have all these car shows there all the time. Yeah. I know a lot of people know it for that. They have like that Corvette show and stuff. And so it just happened that when we were getting sort of ready to graduate from that, oh shit, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, here it is. That's all right. No. That's why we can edit.
But and they're always dumb robocalls anyway. The director of that particular Department of Distance Education said, we have a slot coming open, and we want somebody that better reflects our student body. So they had a bunch of professors that were, combat arms, residence course graduates. And they wanted somebody that was a distance education graduate. They wanted somebody of combat service support. Lucky for me, there was a big push at this time to hire more women.
So if anything, being a woman has worked in your favor at this time.
It did. And so I interviewed for the job, and I was a lieutenant colonel at that time.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Chun said, we'll see if you make colonel, and I did then. And yeah, so they sort of pulled strings. This is how they do things in the military. If they want to hire a particular person, this is how the entire federal workforce operates. Okay.
Yeah,
they want to hire a particular person.
Yeah.
They just make the criteria so narrow that that's the only person, that meets the criteria. Seriously.
No,
they could say like 5'3", 2.
No, I got it. No, I shouldn't even say this. I have written specifications when I submitted my voice where it would say the voice of Jim Bratton.
Yeah, right. That's pretty much it, you're supposed to be hired on merit, but in reality, a lot of the federal civilian employees, and it doesn't really work that way with promotions.
No.
But in hiring, yeah, it is kind of one of those industries that you kind of have to be in already in order to get in.
Yeah.
And so I lucked out with there. I made colonel, and then I went there. And so what I did for the War College was I was the professor for strategic leadership. Strategic leadership is the brand of leadership that the president and the cabinet members exercise. So I really do know what a president does for a living and what they don't do for a living.
I am sitting here just wide-eyed.
I taught strategic leadership, and so I had the leadership piece, I had the ethics piece, I had the negotiation piece. When they would come in the summer, we would do this big 3-tiered multi-country negotiation exercise at the school, which I paired up with one of the professors at the Air Force War College, which is in Montgomery, Alabama, to do this. And yeah, it was just I was there for 3 years. It was just completely fascinating. I met so many people. Everybody from Al Jazeera reporters to Pulitzer Prize winners to, the scholars.
Do cabinet members have to come through that, or do civilians come through that strategic school?
I don't think there's a requirement for civilians to go through it, but like in my particular little group, when I went through it, we had an individual from the State Department in our group. And so they really want that because part of the reason is, you're there to learn how this echelon of government works. And in order to do that, you got to know how these different agencies operate, what their philosophies are, what's going on. I'd have to say that prior to that, even after having worked in the federal government for, 100 years, I think, I really didn't understand how the government operated until I worked there.
Is this like a hyper level of civics?
It was a really congealing experience. While I was there, not only do I do that, I'm one of these people that just can't turn down an opportunity.
I got it.
This can lead to problems.
You're right.
Because I was trying to finish up a master's degree at Penn State.
Right. This is in the psychology?
In psychology, yes.
On top of everything else.
On top of having this full-time job, at the War College. And then I got an offer from Duquesne University.
Yeah.
They had a satellite campus.
But you're still in the military.
Yeah, I'm still active duty. They had a satellite campus around Harrisburg, and they offered a master's degree in leadership and management. And they asked me if I would teach their conflict resolution class.
What?
There was a mandatory class for this master's degree. I had never taught conflict resolution before. I guess they just figured, oh, she's a lawyer. It's close,
Did they have an existing syllabus, or did you have to write the whole?
No, that was just, at the War College for the strategic leadership, I was the course author for that. So I did have to write that course and pick out the books, and, we would do these asynchronous chat groups because the students were all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was just an amazing experience for me. The one thing that I could definitely say about the Army is they never told me I couldn't try something. They never told me I couldn't do something. They were just like 100% supportive of everything that I had ever wanted to do. They never leaned on me. They never told me to prosecute something I didn't want to prosecute. No micromanaging. It was just like, one day I was just like yelling at this like district attorney in Colleen. And they're just like, yeah, And it was the same way at the War College. I kind of went in and I said civil military relations was big then. This was Donald Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense.
Oh, golly.
People in the Pentagon. And it was the revolt of the generals. Do you remember that? Where they gave these interviews to Time magazine and, were very critical, after they had retired, of course. And so I thought, I really want to focus on civil military relations. And so, what books do I want to have these students read? What questions do I want to ask them? One question that I asked them was about Blackwater. What do you think of the Blackwater group? Working with them, I asked them questions about, there was a thing about, is military a profession? How does military differ from, the traditional professions like law, medicine, and ask the students, how, one of the ways that it differs is that these other professions have a code of ethics. And the military really does not have a code of ethics. And if you were going to put together a code of ethics, what would it look like? Oh my gosh, I could not believe how much thought these people had put into this. I gave them examples.
Right.
This is the medical code of ethics. This is the legal code of ethics. This is the psychologist's code of ethics. What do you think that military code of ethics should be? And they just wrote pages and pages.
Was it good work?
Oh my God, it was so good. I told the dean, I'm like, man, you got to read this, Are they going to adopt that? I don't know, not now, but maybe at some point in the future. Yeah.
Maybe in another half a decade or so.
But for the conflict resolution class, so these were people that were in business.
Right.
Either they were in government, they were in business, they owned their own business, something where they needed this leadership training, was going to enhance that.
Right.
And there was a book, there was a book called Interpersonal Communications that was the textbook for the class. And it was really like between critical thinking, which I taught in the strategic leadership course, and conflict resolution, sort of a lot of things came together in my mind. And I started thinking, how come I'm this old and I'm just now learning this?
Well, on the other side could be, wow, I'm a grown-up and I'm still able to learn.
Well, that's true. Every semester that I taught that conflict resolution course, people said it changed their life. People said, I wish I had known about this, before I got married, before I had children, before I started a business, all of these things, because you really get down to the nuts and bolts of what conflict is and what it is not, which is almost more important,
Yeah.
What are the elements of conflict? What do you need to have? And really, understanding and especially the current climate. And, why are things done the way they are? Why does so much of this conflict just get perpetuated when we know how to stop it?
Yeah. Wow, that's
what is so attractive about this? And along that same time, one of my one of my friends, her husband is a professor at Columbia. He teaches geology. And we were hanging out one day, and he remarked, that in the hunter-gatherer period, he was a gatherer. And and at first I thought it was funny like that, oh, that's so funny. The more I thought about it, I'm like, I guess I had just assumed that the gatherers were women and the hunters were the men.
Bad assumption.
But, but there had to be some male gatherers too. And then it was like, well, obviously the gatherers created society. They're the ones that started, we need to stay in one place. We don't need to be following the herd all around. It's much better to do this. And then, and there's this great series on Nova about the evolution of humans, it's Homo sapiens. And it was also like, well, once they had figured out farming and keeping animals, raising animals for slaughter.
What were the hunters?
Well, the hunters just didn't have very much to do anymore. They just weren't as relevant.
Let me make sure we're still rolling here. This is just before. So their last statement was that the hunters have lost their relevance.
Yes. And how did they stay relevant?
Start wars. That's
right. They invented war.
We are gonna wrap up right here. I know you got one more final statement to make. Tell me.
No, it's. I mean, we can talk about this, but getting back to the conflict resolution, one of the necessities with conflict resolution, one of the things with conflict is a perception of scarce resources.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they doing.
Yeah.
They started telling the gatherers, resources are scarce. That other village over there is going to take what we've got unless we, the hunters, protect you from that. And then the hunters at the other village were telling their people the exact same thing. And you know what? It's still happening today. And why are the fucking hunters still in charge?
That's a fair question. And we're going to leave it there. Lisa, thank you so
I'll have to fish out this. I write lengthy Facebook, posts. And a few years ago, I think this was during the Biden administration, I did write a long post about hunters and gatherers, and how, who these people are. And basically the conclusion I reached is the gatherers need to fucking police their own gender. What have you been doing sitting on your thumbs for all these millennia,
Lisa Windsor, this has been a delightful conversation. We will have more, all right? This has been another episode of the Jim Bratton Podcast. Thank all of you for listening.
This has been Jim Bratton Podcast. We hope you have enjoyed, been inspired, informed, angered, or otherwise emotionally stimulated. This is your booth announcer, Sierra Sakel.